the Super Nintendo, a console that shaped the entire generations, that made children dream of impossible worlds from comfort of the living room, that turned a dusty afternoon into a 8-hour app with no bathroom breaks and no regrets. When people talk about the Snes, they always mention the same names: Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, Chrono Trigger, Street Fighter 2, the Mount of Rushmore of gaming, chiseled in nostalgia and carved by millions of tiny hands gripping controllers. Today, we dig into the shadows, the games that almost made it, the hidden gems, the bizarre experiments, the titles that never crossed an ocean, that never saw a store shelf outside Japan, that live and died in obscurity, some unjustly, some very justly. Welcome back to the channel. Today, 20 classics and forgotten gems. Let's start with a game that deserves far more recognition than it ever got. Sky Blazer, released in 1994 by Sony and Microsoft. Yes, that's Sony. Before they decided the best way to compete with Nintendo was to build their own console. This game is living proof that you do not need fame to be incredible. A Sky, a Ryo, who can fly and morph between forms, on mission to rescue Princess Ariana from Sorcerer Regret. Simple, classic, efficient, like a perfect bowl of ramen. It doesn't reinvent food, but every bite is exactly what it should be. The gameplay, absurdly fluid. Sky moves with a lightness that most games of the genre never achieved. You scale walls, soar throughout breathtaking environments, launch different types of magic, and every single stage has a completely unique design. It's a beaten-up platform with the soul of an adventure novel, which will it forgotten. It arrived late in the SNES life cycle, when everyone had already shifted their hungry eyes towards the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64. No market campaign, no franchise follow-up, swallowed whole by the noise of a new generation. It's never efficiently reached most of the world. Verdict played. Sky Blazer is the kind of game that makes you slap your forehead and ask, why did it about suddenly no one tells about this? Gun Saber. Speaking of hidden gems, what were criminally ignored. Unabashed, a Strider clone, but a clone so long-lived and crafted, so technically competent that it earns its own right to exist. Released in 1993 by Atlus, the same company that today is celebrated for their personal series and make teenagers everywhere fell existential dread in the best possible way. Gun Sabers puts you in control of alien or China, genetically modify warriors on a mission to stop a mad scientist to turn humans into monsters. Yes, it is absurdly 1919s. The gameplay is fast, intense, the wall and the ceiling climbing mechanics and real demonstratively to every stage, the bosses and creative and challenging, without being cheap. The visuals nails the cyberpunk aesthetic is the SNES absurdly loved. Never released outside Japan. Almost no one knows it exists, and that's a genuine tragedy, because Gun Saber is exactly a kind of a game you start expecting mediocrity from and finishing 3 hours later wondering how that happened. Play it, especially if you love fast action and don't mind the obviously Strider inspiration. This one is a curious origin story. Originally a 1990 Capcom arcade title, it arrived on SNES in 1992 with some adaptations, and then vanished from collective memory at almost suspicious speed. The premise is gloriously simple. You are the brave one, and you must climb at 5th floor tower to destroy the Dark Lord and reclaim a power gem called the War. Each floor is a battle. Along the way, you are 3 imprisoned allies: a wizard, an Amazon, a ninja, a dragon, and here's where it gets interesting. The companion system is the game's secret weapon, who will bring completely change your strategy. It's a mechanic that sounds modest, but proves surprisingly deep for 1992. Why forgotten? The SNES version lost some visual spark compared to the arcade original, and the Capcom they proceed to release much bigger games like Final Fight, Super Street Fighter 2. The simply eclipses Magic Sword in memory, never officially released outside Japan. Play it, but calibrate your expectations. More historical curiosity than absolutely classic but medieval fantasy atmosphere. It has a charm that doesn't fade. Now we enter every expansion territory, a game that functions almost as a historical artifact. Puffle Mail, developed by Falcon, the same legend behind the Ys series, company that threads make incredible action RPGs as Religion's Calling. Puffle Mail was originally released for Japanese computers in 1992 and arrived on Snes in 1994, Japan only, never localized for the West. And what a game! Mail is an elf bounty hunter, irrelevant, funny, and completely done with everyone nonsense, who sends out after the villain Mountainhead. Yes, his name is no apologies. In an adventure packed with a plot twist, a genuine humor, that story has that unmistakable 19 the name, energy, colorful, chaotic, and surprisingly emotionally resonant. The gameplay blends platforms with a real-time action and delivers a character progression system that feels satisfying every step on the way. The writing is a sharp in a way games almost never were back then. What happened? It got stranger in Japan, where it officially reached the West via Sega CD. The console was already on live support. The SNES version remained a Japan exclusive forever. Play it with a fan translation pad. It's a unique experience that shows just how far ahead its time to Falcon was in the narrative design. Brace yourselves, because this one is going to provoke a complicated emotional reaction. In fans of the classic animated series, The Adventures of Batman and Robin for SNES, in 1994, Konami based on Batman, the animated series, one of the greatest pieces of animation ever produced, a cultural landmark that blended art, decor aesthetics with genuine noir drama and somehow made kids think deeply about morality before bedtime. The visuals are spectacular. The sprites are massive, the detailed, faithful to the animation's dark styles art direction. Gotham has never looked this oppressive and beautiful in a cartoon form. The soundtrack carries the heavily blended atmosphere the series made immortal, but the gameplay is the brutality, punishing almost philosophically difficult, the kind of difficult that makes you suspect the developers never actually want you to finish. Enemies respawn endlessly, the passing is erratic, some stages feel less like challenges and more like personal attacks. Play it for the atmosphere, one if you don't have the patience for the punishment level difficult. A classic case of gorgeous on the outside, merciless on the inside. Here's a historical curiosity that aged in a very specific and very fascinated way. Marvel War for the Gens, 1996. Capcom, a platform where you control Spider-Man, Wolverine, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor to recover the Infinity Gems and defeat a corrupted Elder Warlock. Yes, the Infinity Gems. Thanos, in 1996, on the SNES. Before the Marvel MCU existed, before anyone outside the comics would even know what the Infinity Gems were, Capcom was already making games about them. The MCU just discovered it, what Capcom figured out 30 years ago. The gameplay is solid. Capcom knows exactly how to action games like, but the title arrives too late. The SNES essentially is retired. PlayStation dominated. A 2D side-scrolling Marvel game simply couldn't generate enough buzz. Play it for the historical significance alone. Show it to a MCU fan who didn't grow up with the SNES and watch their jaw hit the floor. Now. Sailor Moon. No retro gaming channel worth its salt can ignore Sailor Moon. Several Sailor Moon games existed for the SNES, but the most famous is the Beaten Up, released in 1993 by Arc System Works. Yes, the same company that today makes Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball FighterZ, and somehow keeps topping itself exclusively for the Japan. The game is exactly what you hope. You pick Sailor Senshin, walk left to the right, punch Dark Kingdom monsters with the power of love and justice, and save the day in a shower with sparkles and transformation sequences. In co-op with a friend, it becomes genuinely joyful, but here lies the strategy. Sailor Moon was massive in the 90s. The series earned internationally. Girls everywhere declare loyalty to their favorite Sailor Scout. There was an enormous hungry audience for this game that never received it officially. The fan who played it usually on official channel. It won one of the greatest injustices of SNES distribution history. Honestly, play it. Not a revolutionary beating up, but the nostalgia factor is absolutely devastating for anyone who grew up with the series. Yu Yu Hakusho Final. From one iconic anime to another, Yu Yu Hakusho Final. If you grow up in 90s with access to the right TV channels, you know Yu Yu Hakusho. Yusuke Urameshi was the delinquent hero of an entire generation, a spirit detective with a spirit gun that every kid on the playground pretends to fire at least once. The SNES games, released in 1994, Japan exclusive, is a fighting game starring the series' most iconic characters. Yusuke Kawabara, Kurama Hiei Toguro. The full roster as a fighting game, functional but basic, it lacks the depth of the Street Fighter II and the spectacle of Mortal Kombat, but it gives fans exactly what they wanted, watching their favorite characters fighting with powers they recognized from the anime. Sometimes that's enough. The crime with how massive Yu Yu Hakusho was worldwide. This game could have been runaway success international markets. Instead, its play stayed in Japan. Most fans never even know it existed. Play it if you are a fan of the anime. Run if you are looking for the technically deep fighting game. Complete tonal shift from the Spirit and Demons to Goof Troop, released in 1993 by Capcom. Again, Capcom was basically a SNES resident in these years. Based on the Disney Channel animated series, Goof Troop puts you in a control of Goofy and Max on a mission to rescue Pete and his kids from pirates. What nobody expected was that Goof Troop would be such a sophisticated puzzle action game. You don't just hit enemies, you think, use environmental objects strategically, through intense and precise timing, and in a co-op with a friend, the experience double in quality. Know who made this game? Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil, and you can see the DNA of puzzle design he later perfected in his Resident, hidden throughout every stage of Goof Troop. A Disney cartoon secretly taught an entire generation how to survive a zombie apocalypse. Play it, one of the best co-op experience on the SNES, hiding on the cartoon dog and a floppy hat. Undercover Cops. Now, we enter cult territory. Undercover Cops, originally a 1992 arcade game by Iron, the same company behind R-Type, who specialized in making extremely difficult games and apparently enjoying what people suffer. Undercover Cops is a post-apocalyptic beaten up with a visual style that is brutal, grotesque, and utterly unforgettable. The characters are enormous, loaded with muscle and attitude. The setting is a dystopical future that law enforcement had been privatized, and everything looks like it was designed by someone who ate a cyberpunk novel for breakfast. The SNES version, released in 1992 exclusively in Japan, presents much of the arcade's visual ferocity. This is one of the best those games you look at immediately. No, it isn't American. It has the specific aggressive visual sensibility that Japan studio had the audacity to commit to. Today is a cult object amongst SNES collectors, as it should be. Play it if you love beating ups with a resonant visual and the experience you won't find anywhere else. Enjoy deep dives. This is where you hit like. Every like tells the algorithm this content deserves to exist, and trust me, there are 10 more games of this that will absolutely blows your mind. If you haven't already, it takes 2 seconds and costs nothing to you, but all for me. Hard Night Food. A Hard Night Food, a name that sounds completely random, attached to a game you've almost certain never heard of, but that carries a peculiar story of almost success. Developed by ASC2 Corporation and released in 1993, Hard Night Food stars a head wearing a skunk on an adventure to resemble the pieces of magical rainbow. It is exactly as warm and colorful as that sounds, and there is nothing wrong with that. The gameplay is competent. The controls responsive the stages varied. There is even a companion named Peck, a little blue creature that you use to attack enemies and interact with their environment. Nothing revolutionary, but every executed with genuine care. The tragedy, it reached Western markets but with virtually no market, buried under the avalanche of bigger releases, never officially released in most regions. Today surviving in the memories of a small handful of people who rented it by accident in the 90s and never forgot. Rarest. Play it if you love classic platformers and you want to discover one that feel unjustly outside the canon. Bunkers. Speaking of Disney, games that weren't by invisible bunkers, based on the Disney Channel animated shows Bunkers, the crazy cartoon copycat with a human partner. The game was released in 1994 by Capcom. Yes, Capcom again. They had a Disney partnership during this era that produced both brilliant games and throughout forgettable ones. Bunkers sits firmly in the second category. Not bad, exactly, but it has nothing to disguise it from the ocean of the licensed platforms flooding the market at the time. Adequate graphics, functional controls, no spark whatsoever. It's the gaming equivalent of a decent meal you forget by following morning. Never officially released outside a few regions. The show never found international footing either. This is one of those archaeological artifacts of a very specific moment in the Disney-Capcom relationship. Verdict: run. On release, you are a devoted fan of the show. There are vastly better Snes platformers waiting for your attention right now. Sonic Blast Man 2. What it I told you title made a game where the core mechanic is literally punching criminals with the force of a nautical jackhammer. Welcome to the Sonic Blast Man 2, released in 1994, Japan exclusive. Sonic Blast Man 2 is a beating up that harbors zero pretension of sophistication and absolutely doesn't need any. You are a muscular superhero. You punch constantly with absolute force. Everything that moves by it will be destroyed. The game is originally from an arcade machine that featured a special controller you literally punch to attack. That's tactical, physical mechanics obviously didn't translate to a standard SNES controller, but the raw, primal energy completely preserved. Why forgotten? Staying in Japan, arrived at the end of the console's life, and it's the simplicity, charming as it is also its ceiling. Play it out of curiosity. It's the kind of the game that puts an involuntary smile on your face within 30 seconds. Ghost Chaser the same. Ghost Chaser the same. This is probably means absolutely nothing to you, and that's precisely why we are here. Released in 1994 by Banpresto, Japan exclusive. It's a sci-fi beaten up with a aesthetic that blends robots, cyborgs, androids, and the classic side-scroller action into something genuinely coherent. You play Boraba, an android fighting to protect humans in a city overrun by mechanical creatures. The visual quality is above average for its genre. The movement is fluid and wow, that surprises you. It's not innovated, but extremely well executed, which actually makes its obscurity more baffling, not less. Today a fan-made English translation patch exists, but who goes searching for a game that were never heard of? That's the Cat 222 of obscurity. Verdict: play it if you are a general fan who wants to explore the least visited corners of the Japanese SNES catalog. The Amazing Spider-Man Little Falls. Spider-Man Little Falls, a game that's somewhat fascinating and frustrating, just like its hero. Released in 1994 by AS2 Corporation, Japan's exclusive. Little Falls is an action platformer where Spider-Man faces an impressive rogues gallery: Shocker, Rhino, Vulture, Venom, Carnage, and Paper, the dream of every Spider fan. In practice, the game is visually competent and makes solid uses of Spider-Man powers. Wall crawling, web swimming, project attacks at all feels right, but stage design is wildly inconsistent, and some sections cross from challenging to genuinely confusing. It promises more than it delivers, but this is the crime. With how beloved Spider-Man was internationally in 19s comics, animated series that theme songs literally everyone can still sing from memory, this game could have been a massive international hit. Instead, it stayed in Japan. Verdict: Play it for the nostalgia factor and the villain lineup. Just don't expect Mega Man or Super Metroid. Super Adventure Island 2. Let's talk about a game that leaves its own name shadow. Super Adventure Island 2. The Adventures Island City is one of the longest running and the last remembered franchise in gaming history. Born as a Wonder Boy adaptation, it became its own franchise and generated titles for NES, Game Boy, and Wii on Snes. With Super Adventures Island 2 in 1994. The sequel is interesting because it breaks from the linear formula of the original. You explore multiple islands, no literal, no linear order, collect power-ups and level up a progression arc that faithfully echoes a Metroidvania. For a 1994 licensed platform from franchise nobody took seriously, it's surprisingly ambitious. It reached the Western market, but launched in twilight of the SNES era, passed almost entirely unnoticed. Verdict: play it, especially if you enjoy platforms with a exploratory element. Now, Clay Fighter. Occasionally, the gaming industry produces something so strange, so specifically treated to its exactly historical moment, that the only appropriate response is pure appreciation. Clay Fighter, in 1993, fighting game where every character is made of clay, literally. The sprites were created by photographic stop motion. Clay figures set in circles where a caramel meteor have given life to a cat of magnificently insane characters. Your fighter roster includes a murderous clown, a lagoon monster, an evil Santa Claus, and a giant operating singer. It is completely unranked, and it was clearly an attempt to capitalize it on the Mortal Kombat craze using humor instead of blood. As a fighting game, limited, very limited. Heavy controls, no depth, no velocity, and evaluables after 20 minutes. But as a cultural artifact and of the era when the industry throwing everything there wow to see what stuck, generally fascinating. Verdict: play it for historical curiosity. One if you want an actual decent fighting game. Feather, the emblem of justice. Now we reach a tactical RPG territory, a genre that is SNES dominated with legendary titles like Fire Emblem and the Tactical Ogre, and Feather, the emblem of the justice, deserves a seat at the table. Released in 1994 by Yanome, Japanese exclusive, Feather is a tactical RPG with a morally mechanics that was absolutely ahead of its time. Your actions in a battle determines whether you are becoming a hero or a villain, killing fleeing enemies, attacking unnecessary, or conversely, spare lives. Everything waits on a moral scale that changes your story. The narrative is solid. It's civil war in a fantasy kingdom where neither side is purely good or evil. The characters have complex motivations. It's exactly the kind of RPG that Western audience would have loved if they had access to. Never left Japan, never officially translated, existed only at Japan, exclusive that most of the world never know about. Play it. Verdict: with a translation patch, a tactical RPG jam that deserves far more recognition. Game 19. The Blues Brothers. Jake and Elbow Blues, two men on a mission from God. And in a SNES game you probably didn't know existed. The Blues Brothers SNES was released in 1993, based on the 1980s classic film, which was itself based on a Saturday Night Live sketch, which makes the game as game based on a movie based on comedy beat, and that's beautiful. You control Jake and Elbow through platforming stages where you collect musical items and evade the police. The charm is the fidelity to the universe that music is instantly recognizable. The aesthetic captures the film's noir humor. The playing co-op with a friend has that chaotic energy of the original duo, but the game suffers from the classic licensed game problem made fast, made to capitalize on a name with a gameplay depth that is essentially non-existent. Not horrible, just not memorable. That's the film was a mere 30 years old when the game was released, in eternity and pop culture years. Verdict: run as a game. Play as curiosity if you are a devoted fan of the film. Now is the final game, Dragon's Lair, and to close with a golden key. First of the frustration, Dragon's Lair has a love-hate relationship with a game that begins in 1983 arcades, when Don Bluth delivered a cinema-quality animation through a Laserdisc machine. Dick, the daring rescue princess Daphne, was a visually revolutionary aquarium-eating machine draped in a genuinely artistically. The 1994 Snes version attempted to capture the spirit cartridge from an almost impossible task that arrived was a visually reusable approximation, but gameplay that consists almost entirely of memorizing sequences and dying repeatedly until you nail the exact timing. It is less a game and more ripping puzzle, disguised as an adventure. In 1983, this format was revolutionary because it never seen anything like it. By 1992, on Snes, player expectation had evolved far beyond that Dragon's Lair's mechanic could deliver. The game's DNA hadn't adapted. Verdict: play it for the story. Run if you want the have master patient for dying 50 times and the same obstacle. And there you have it. 20 games that time swallowed world. 20 adventures that almost no one lived. Some are genuine gems that deserve a second chance. Sky Blazer, Popful Male Feather, others are fascinating historical artifacts, worth knowing for everything they represent. Marvel Wall of the Gems, Euro Recture, and some are proof that not everything forgotten was destined to be remembered. But that's what makes retro games genuinely thrilling. It's not just the celebrated classics, it's these parallel stories, these games that almost made it, this cartridge that got stranded on the wrong side of an ocean. Many of these games never crossed the international borders, never reached store shelves outside Japan, while people everywhere were living their lives, watching their favorite TV shows, rooting for the heroes. This was a parallel universe of games that simply didn't exist for them, but it exists now. Emulators, fan translations, patches, retro gaming, communities. Today you can play literally anything you ever released for the SNES. And maybe it's time to start exploring the hidden catalog. Now, I need you to know, of all 20 games you just saw, have you played any of them? Is there one you knew about that you completely overlooked? Tell me in the comments. Seriously, those comments are pure gold to me. If this video sent you on a time travel trip, if it made you want to dig deeper into the SNES catalog beyond the obvious, leave a like. It costs nothing and means everything for this channel. Subscribe. New deep dives drops regularly. Share with someone who grew up with his controller in their hands. In the SNES has 4 more secrets left to uncover, and we will be here to crack every single one open.